Drowning in a well she was thrown into for stealing bread. A Lakota chief pulled her up. The rope was dry-rotted at the splice, and I knew it before I took hold of it. I knew it the way you know the ice before you step onto a river, something in the sound of it, or maybe just years of handling rope in country that eats everything you leave in the open. I took hold of it anyway. Below me was dark. The well was maybe 30 feet down, maybe less. They dug it shallow because the water table sat close here, this stretch of grass between the creek bend and the bluffs, and in drier years it ran to nothing and they'd fight over it at the council. I'd heard the fight. I'd stayed out of it. This was Duran's land now, which was to say it had been taken in the way land is taken, a paper signed by men who had not walked it, and Durand ran cattle on the bottom grass and kept 4 men with guns on his payroll and did as he wished in the valley. I was here because 2 of my young men had come back from the trading post at midday and said there was a woman in Duran's well. That was all they said, a woman in the well. I did not ask why. I pulled my horse off the water and went. Her name was Clara Marsh. I did not know that yet. I knew nothing about her yet. I only knew what my young men had said, and what I could see when I got down on one knee at the lip of the well and looked. A pale shape in the dark, and 2 hands gripping the stone ledge at the waterline, fingers white with the cold and the grip, and water up to her chin. She was not screaming. That was the first thing I noticed. A woman who has been in a well long enough to stop screaming is a woman past the loud part of her fear, which is worse. I said something down to her in English, which is not a language I carry easily, but I have enough of it. She looked up. Her eyes were very dark from down there in that dark. She said, voice steady, "The rope." I looked at the rope, coiled on the post beside the winch. I picked it up and felt the splice, and I knew it. "The bucket rope is no good," I said. A pause, then, "I know, they used it to lower me." Duran's men. They had used the bad rope deliberately then, not carelessness, something colder than carelessness. I untied the rope from my saddle. It was new, braided tight, bought from the Mennonite trader at the settlement 2 weeks before. I passed one end around the post and fed the other down. She took it one-handed, the other still gripping stone. "Can you climb?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I've been here since morning." The sun was going low behind the bluffs. That was a long time to hold a ledge in cold water, a long time to keep your mouth above the surface. "I'm going to pull," I said. "Hold the rope with both hands, don't let go for anything." She let go of the ledge. Both hands on the rope. I pulled. She was not heavy. She was not a large woman, but 30 feet of rope with a body at the end of it and no pulley is not nothing, and I am past the age of pretending otherwise. My shoulders told me about it. I pulled hand over hand and the rope came up, and I heard her feet find the stone of the well wall, and I felt the load lighten. And then her hands were at the lip, and I reached down and got her by the wrists and lifted her out onto the grass. She lay face down for a moment, just breathing. I sat back on my heels and let her breathe. After a while she pushed up to her hands and knees, and then she sat back on her heels the same way I was sitting, and she looked at me, water running out of her hair and down her face. A cut on her cheek, old enough to have scabbed, new enough that the scab had softened in the water. Her dress was a plain gray thing, dark now with wet, and she was shaking from the cold though the evening was warm. That kind of shaking goes deep and does not stop quickly. I took my coat off and held it out. She looked at it, then at me. Then she took it without a word and pulled it around her shoulders. "Who are you?" she said. "Lakota," I told her. "I'm Clara Marsh." She pushed the wet hair back from her face with both hands. "I suppose you want to know what I did." "I know what you did," I said. "My men were at the trading post." She didn't answer right away. Then, "A loaf of bread," she said. "From Duran's Dry Goods. My daughter is 7. We've been on half rations for 3 weeks." She said it flat, not asking for sympathy, just handing me the facts so there would be no confusion between us. I stood up. Where is your daughter now? With the preacher's wife, in town. I left her there this morning and came to ask Durand for work. Her mouth tightened. He said no, said he didn't hire squatters. I took the bread on the way out. One of his men saw me. She looked at the well, then she looked away from it. He said the law could fish me out in the morning, she said, or not. I had known Durand was a hard man. There is a difference between hard and what I was hearing. I filed the difference away. Can you walk? I said. Yes. My camp is 1.5 miles north. Come. She stood up. The coat reached her knees. She handed it back to me, and I shook my head and she kept it. We walked north, her and me, in the long evening light, and neither of us said much. There was not a great deal to say. I knew what she had done and why, and she knew I had pulled her out, and between those two things there was enough ground to walk on for now. My camp at that time was a small one. 3 lodges, 2 of my sister's family, 1 of mine. I had a fire and a cookpot and enough to feed a woman and myself, and I had dry blankets, and that was more than Clara Marsh had had since morning. My sister's name was Winona. She came out of her lodge when she heard us, and she looked at Clara without any expression on her face, and then she looked at me. She needs dry clothes and food, I said. Winona looked at Clara again. Clara was still shaking, the coat damp on her shoulders, water still coming out of the ends of her hair. Winona said something to me in Lakota that I will not repeat here, because it was a commentary on the way white settlers generally behaved, and was not untrue, but also was not what Clara Marsh needed to hear her first minute in camp. Then Winona took Clara by the arm and walked her into her lodge, and I heard the flap close. I built the fire up and put water on. When Clara came back out, she was wearing one of Winona's dresses, dark blue wool, and she had her hair dried and combed back, and the shaking had slowed. She sat by the fire, and she held a cup of hot broth in both hands, and she drank it slowly, and she did not talk. After a while she said, "You didn't ask Durand's permission to pull me out." "No," I said. "He'll have something to say about that." "I expect so." She looked at me over the rim of the cup. "You're not worried?" I thought about how to answer that. "Worry is not the same as ready," I said finally. She was quiet after that for a while. The fire settled. One of my sister's children, a boy of about 9, came and sat across from Clara and stared at her with the frank curiosity children have when they haven't learned yet to hide it. Clara looked at him and said hello in a small voice. He looked at me, then back at her, then went inside. "I have to go back for my daughter," Clara said. "In the morning," I said. "It's dark now and you need a night off your feet. I'll send a man to the preacher's wife tonight so she knows you're safe." Clara put the cup down in her lap and looked at the fire. There was something moving through her face, something she was working to keep still, and I watched it the way you watch a horse that is deciding whether to bolt, not staring, just aware of it, giving it room. "I'm not a problem you have to solve," she said. Her voice was careful. "I know what you are and what this is, and I don't want to be something you carry." "Clara Marsh," I said. She looked at me. "You were in a well, now you're out. That's the whole of it for tonight." After a moment she nodded, short once, then she looked back at the fire. Winona came out and sat with us. She brought more broth and a piece of dried meat and set it in front of Clara without ceremony. Clara said thank you. Winona said something back in Lakota, and Clara looked at me. "She says you have good hands," I told her, "for climbing rope." Clara looked at her own hands. The palms were raw from the rope, pink and tight-looking. "Tell her I'll have better ones soon," she said. I told Winona. Winona looked at Clara and made a sound that was as close to approval as Winona generally got with anyone she'd known less than a season. I noted it. Durand came in the morning. He came with 2 men, and he came to my camp, which told me something, that he'd followed the tracks or someone had told him where I was. He came on a good horse, gray, and he had a pistol on his hip, and the kind of settled confidence that money gives a man in a place where money is still new enough to be a weapon. I was standing outside my lodge when he rode in. Clara was behind me. I had not told her to stay back. I had said there was a man coming, and she had stood up from the fire and come to stand behind my right shoulder, and that is where she was. Durand looked at her and then at me. "She's a thief," he said. "She took bread," I said. "That's what thieving is." He moved the horse a step. "She's also on my land right now." "No," I said, "you are on mine." He looked around. This was open country, grassland, and he was used to thinking of it as land that could be owned the way you own a horse or a coat. "There's no deed," he started. "There is a treaty," I said, "older than your deed." He shifted in the saddle. One of the men behind him put his hand near his gun. I watched the hand without looking at it, the way you watch a man's feet to know where he's going before his body moves. "Chief," Durand said, and the word had a particular kind of weight behind it, the weight men put into a word when they're using it to mean something other than respect. "I don't want trouble with your people. I just want what's mine." "She is not yours," I said. He looked at Clara again. She had not moved. She was standing the way people stand when they have decided they are done being moved by a particular kind of man, and it is not a proud stance, not a theatrical one, just still, feet planted, looking at him. "She stole from me," he said. "There are laws." "There are," I said. "She took bread because her child was hungry. If you want to call the law for that, call it. I will come to whatever proceeding they hold, and I will say what I know, and what I know is that your man left her in a well from noon until evening. I will ask whether that is also what the law permits." A silence. The man behind Durand, with his hand near his gun, was very still. "She stays in your camp, she's your problem," Durand said. His voice had changed, still flat, but a different kind of flat, the kind that has decided on a retreat and is picking the direction. "Then she's my problem," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Men like Durand have a calculus they run, quick and quiet, about what a thing will cost them against what they stand to gain. I watched him run it. I had been watching men run that calculus my whole life. I know what the face looks like when the sum comes out wrong. He turned his horse and rode out, and his men went with him. Clara let out a breath behind me, small, controlled. I turned and looked at her. Her face was very still, but her eyes were not. Something in them that I can only describe as a woman looking at a man and seeing him, not a shape of him, not a useful thing, but him, the way you look at a thing when you understand what it cost. "He'll find another way at me," she said. "Men like that always do." "Yes," I said. "Probably. And you'll be in the middle of it." "I was in the middle of it when I took the rope down the well," I said. She looked at me for another moment. Then she turned and went back to the fire. I sent one of my young men, a quiet boy named Chayton, to the preacher's wife in town that morning. He came back in the afternoon with Clara's daughter. The girl's name was Me. She was 7, as Clara had said, small and brown-haired and serious-faced in the way of children who have had to be serious. She came into camp holding Chayton's hand, and let go of it when she saw her mother, and crossed the distance between them at a dead run and hit Clara in the middle like a small thrown stone. And Clara went down on one knee and caught her and held her. And I watched that from the far side of the fire and did not say anything. Me looked at me from her mother's arms with dark eyes. "Are you the one who pulled her out?" she said. "Yes," I said. She regarded me for a moment, then she said, "Good," and went back to her mother. Winona, watching from the door of her lodge, made a sound I recognized. She makes it when something meets with her opinion of how things ought to be. The next 3 days, I want to tell you right. Not in the right order, maybe, memory doesn't work that way. Not for me anymore. Everything comes in pieces with the weight in different places, but right. There was the morning Clara found the creek and washed her clothes and came back with her hair still damp, braided back the way Winona had shown her, wearing the blue wool dress again, and the way the light sat on her face when she came through the trees into the open, plain morning light. Nothing remarkable about it except that it was her and she was whole. There was the afternoon she sat with Winona and learned how to do something with sinew that I don't have the name for in English, her brow pulled together with the effort of it, Winona showing her twice, and then a third time with a patience I don't often see in my sister, who is not a patient woman. Clara got it on the fourth try and said something under her breath, and Winona laughed. I don't know when I last heard Winona laugh at something a white woman said. There was the evening Me asked me if I knew any stories. I told her one, an old one about a man and a crow and a river. She listened very seriously, and at the end she said, "Did the crow die?" I said no. She said, "Good." She seemed to feel that death in stories was overused, and I found I agreed with her. And there was the night of the third day. Clara was sitting outside after Me was asleep. I came out of my lodge and there was a cold wind off the north, late season edge in it, and she had her arms around her knees looking at the dark. I sat down a few feet from her. "You're trying to figure out what comes next," I said. "Always," she said. "That's all I've been doing for 2 years." She was quiet for a moment. "My husband died at the Yellowstone crossing. Fever. Me was 5. We had a land claim and I have been trying to make it into something, and I am very tired of trying." She said the last part the way you say a fact, not the way you say something you want sympathy for. "What's on the claim?" I said. "A half-built house and 60 acres of grass and no cattle." She picked at a thread on her sleeve. "Durand wants the grass. That's why the bread was just an excuse. He's been looking for one." I had already thought this. I had been thinking about it for 3 days. "He won't move on the claim while you're in my camp," I said. She looked at me. "You can't keep me in your camp forever." "No," I said, "but I can ride to the land office in the spring and register your claim properly with witnesses. There are men in the valley who owe me enough to be witnesses. Durand's paper is newer than a treaty and newer than a claim properly filed. He knows it." Clara was quiet. "Why would you do that?" she said. I thought about it. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to give her the real one, not the easy one. "Your daughter asked me if I knew any stories," I said. "I would like to tell her more of them." A long quiet. The fire was low. The wind moved through the grass out past the lodges, that dry sound it makes when the season is turning, almost like water. Clara said, "Lakota." I looked at her. She had turned to face me. In the firelight her face was very clear, not soft, not hopeful in the way of someone asking, just clear, like a person who has made up their mind and is letting you see it. "I would like to stay," she said. "Not because I don't have anywhere else. I have a claim and I have a house half built and I'll finish it one way or another. I'd like to stay because I want to." She kept looking at me. "I don't know if that's a thing you want." I didn't answer right away. The fire shifted, a coal fell. "It's a thing I want," I said. She nodded once. Then she leaned not toward me, not away, just shifted so that her shoulder was against mine, just the weight of it. And we sat like that and looked at the fire, and neither of us said anything else. And the wind came and went in the grass, and somewhere to the north a coyote spoke once and went quiet. I put my hand over hers where it rested on the ground. She turned her hand over. "Durand did try again. Of course he did. He tried in October, when the grass was going yellow and the whole valley felt like something about to happen. 2 of his men came to the claim when Clara was there with me, working the house, and told her she needed to vacate. She said no. They said the law would come. She said bring it. She rode to my camp that evening and told me. I listened. The next morning I rode to town. I did not ride with men behind me. I did not put on anything that was meant to impress. I rode in on my horse in my coat, and I went to the land office, and I sat down across from the clerk, a small red-faced man named Gruber who had always been nervous around me, and I put Clara's land claim on the desk between us, and I named 2 witnesses, ranchers from the north end of the valley who owed me the kind of debt that doesn't go away. And Gruber looked at the paper and looked at me, and wrote down what I told him to write. Then I went to see Durand. I want to be careful how I tell this part because there was nothing dramatic about it. I went to his house, a big frame house on the hill above the creek, and his man let me in because Durand's man, whatever else he was not stupid enough to keep me standing on the porch. I sat across a table from Durand, and I told him what I had done that morning, and I told him what the 2 witnesses would say under oath, and I told him the name of the federal land agent in the territorial capital who had, some years ago, found himself in a position where my help had mattered considerably, and who would take my letter seriously. Durand listened. He was a man who could listen when it cost him something not to. When I was done, he said, "She means something to you." "She does," I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then he said, "Fine." Just that, fine. He stood up and I stood up and I walked out of his house and got on my horse and rode back down the hill. That was October. He left Clara's claim alone after that. He found other trouble, other people, the way such men always do, but he left that piece of it alone. I have been working on the house with her through the winter. I want you to understand what I mean when I say that. I mean the 2 of us in the cold, measuring boards and driving nails and arguing about where the window ought to go and being wrong about it and trying again. I mean me bringing us coffee in a tin cup and watching us work with that serious face of hers. I mean Winona coming down sometimes and looking at what we'd done and saying in Lakota that the roofline was crooked, which it was, and us fixing it. I have built things before. I have built lodges and fences and corrals and one small bridge over a creek that nearly got away from me, and I was not sorry to see it go. I have never built a house with a woman beside me who had decided I was worth the trouble. That is the word for it, I think, worth. Not a word I'd have put to myself, not in recent years. Not since the treaties came and went and the valley changed, and I watched what I'd spent my life tending pull away from me one season at a time. I had gotten quiet about it. You get quiet about the things that cost too much to keep saying out loud. Clara does not know all of that yet. Some of it she has guessed, because she is not an unobservant woman, and some of it I have told her on the long evenings when me is asleep and the fire is low, and there's no reason not to say a true thing. She listens the way a good person listens, not to fix it, not to say the thing that will make it hurt less, just to hold it a moment and hand it back carefully. Last week she found me standing at the frame of the east window, just standing, looking out at the valley in the evening light. The grass all brown and gold, the creek catching the last of the sun, the bluffs going purple in the distance. I'd stopped working without meaning to. She came and stood next to me. After a while she put her hand on my back, between my shoulder blades, just rested it there. "It's a good valley," she said. "It is," I said. "Worth fighting for." I looked at her. She was looking out at the valley, not at me, the same light on her face that was on the grass and the water, and she had said it the way you say a thing you've thought through and decided is true, not the way you say a thing to make someone feel better. "Yes," I said. She turned and looked at me then, up close in that light, her eyes very clear. "So are you," she said. I did not say anything. There was not anything to say that would have fit inside that moment without breaking something about it. She turned back to the valley and I put my arm around her shoulders and we stood at the window frame in the fading light, and the evening came on, and the creek went quiet, and the first star came out over the bluffs, and neither of us moved. The valley below us, gold and quiet. Her shoulder against mine. The house around us not finished, not yet but standing.